are live.
To the Ref Room, hockey talk for referees, coaches, players, and fans.
Broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.
With your hosts, Scott Smokin, Silz, and Brad Baumruck.
Live.
The Ref Room starts right now.
And now your host.
Okay, it is Monday night. This is the Ref Room. I am Scott Smokin Silz, along with my man Brad Baumruck. I got the date right, so that was good.
Yep, that was a good start to this week.
Exactly. Did you have a good week? A lot of hockey?
I did. Lots of hockey, lots of good games, lots of compliments. So that was very nice.
Wow.
I want to say thank you to all the parents that gave us compliments. I mean, I had multiple games where multiple parents from even different states came up to us that were involved in playoffs, and they were very complimentary. Got a visit from Brad Watson, referee of the NHL for 20 years.
Wow.
He came down to talk about something, and just it was a nice weekend. I had a lot of fun. The referees that I skated with, everybody worked their tails off.
Yeah.
It's playoff hockey. The kids worked their tails off. The coaches were challenging a couple of times, but I had a good weekend. How about you, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I had some great games this weekend, some intense games. Everything's been really close. Like, it's been really electric in the building, I should say, and it's a lot of fun. Nothing better than playoff hockey. And Speaking of playoff hockey, we have a gentleman today. He has been the president of USA Hockey for 6 years and on the board for God knows how long. He will tell us, I'm sure.
He'll tell us.
But let's do this. We are going to bring in Mr. Jim Smith from USA Hockey, past president. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me, Scott, Brad. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I had the good fortune to skate with Jim a couple weeks ago at a game, and we got into a conversation in the ref room, and he decided he would be nice enough to come and join us. So I'm really excited because I don't think anybody's got any more insight into the workings of USA Hockey and what goes on, and we're going to go through some of those things today and talk about some of the new rules and how they come up with the rules and all kinds of good stuff. And of course, if you guys have any questions, put them in the comments. And if you're just joining us, please hit the subscribe button and the notification button and all that good stuff. So, Jim, welcome to the show, man. We're really excited to have you here. I mean, you've been in USA Hockey for how many years now?
Well, I've been on the board for 34 years, but prior to that, I was with AHI, the state organization. I was past president of AHI, and I was with them for close to 30 years. And before that, Nihil president, and just used to work in the old Park Ridge Hornets before they merged with the Niles group to form the Express. So back a long time. It's interesting because, first of all, I want to thank you, Scott, for finally stopping laughing from refereeing me the other day. So that was nice that you finally calmed down.
I had a ball. You're a legend, okay?
I appreciate that. But I was refereeing at Park Ridge. I was doing, I think, a Bantam Central States game, and walked into the locker room, and there was a referee in there, a young man, 20 years old or whatever, and he was talking about, trying to inform me about what's going on. And I just leaned over to him. I said, "You see this referee room here?" I said, "I built that in 1977. So he quickly learned that I'm an old fart that's been around for a while. So
yeah,
that's
an
fun.
old building. That's still one of my favorite buildings to go in. Park Ridge is awesome. I think they have great ice. It's not too cold in there. Might be time for a lighting upgrade, but I love that barn. That is just a great place to skate.
Yeah. Well, actually, the same contractor that built that rink built the Winnetka rink. As you can see, they're both similar. They've skated in both.
I did not know that, but
I never even put that together. But
there's a difference, though. Winnetka is about 50 degrees colder in there, okay? Well, that's one of the colder buildings.
The reason for that is because David and Jimmy Santee, two of our medalists in figure skating back in the 80s and 90s, that was their home base rink. So it's always been that warm, and they just make the ice is meticulous. So it's always great ice. And I coached Maine South High School for 5 years, and we, the coaching staff and the players, used to go out in T-shirts. That's how warm it was. I mean, practices are tough because it really gets warm in there. So
yeah, I've had players even say to me, like, "Is this building always this warm?" Like they're almost suffering in there sometimes when when they're playing, and it's like, yeah, it's really nice and comfortable in here. Thank you very much.
It's still a figure skating based rink, and that's why it's so warm all the time.
Skokie's the same way, I mean, they're getting ready to take their ice down and redo it, I guess, which is kind of cool. I don't know if they're putting in new boards and new glass, but I know they're working on the refrigeration. So tonight is the championship game, and then that's kind of it for hockey for a while, as far as that goes, for at least for the men's league. So
there's a reason why it's warm at Skokie, and that's Steve Glickman, because he doesn't like cold weather. So
Steve's going to Florida, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I know. He's going to Florida, but he had Florida in his rink for 30 years. So
yeah, well, we got a couple rinks Steve needs to come visit, so they'll turn the heat on, okay?
Yeah,
yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's get it going, and Romeoville is one of the colder rinks, even though it's newer. I can't figure it out.
I worked the Mission rink yesterday, and my hands have not recovered yet. It was so cold in there.
I haven't been there, so I don't know. So
painfully cold, trust me. All right, Jim, we got a couple questions for you. So let's talk about some of the new rules that we have this year. One of them, which seems to change quite a bit. We used to have delayed icing or delayed offsides. We don't have delayed offsides anymore. We have instant offsides for youth hockey, but they did keep it for high school. I'd kind of like to know how they were able to pull that off and keep high school with the old rules and not change over. And I'd like to kind of know, because you say, wait, it changes all the time. So what's your thoughts moving forward? Are we going to stay with this rule for 4 years, or do you think this is something that could be adjusted?
Well, first of all, on the 4-year rule, I like the idea now that we're changing the rules every 4 years, because I kind of fought for that, because we were doing them every 2 years. We do bylaws 1 year and rules the next. And it was almost like we had to change the rules. So we would send them out and people would submit rules. some of them being ridiculous rules. I remember one, a referee from Los Angeles submitted a rule that he wanted to designate who keeps the pucks after the warm-ups, the home team or the visiting team. And we're like, that's really not something that should go in the book. But sometimes you get some rules submitted like that. So fought very hard to get 4 years because I really don't believe the game is all that broken. I mean, every 4 years gives you an opportunity to see what some of the other entities are doing, like the NC2A, pro hockey, maybe some of the other leagues around the world that might be doing it, instituting new rules. As far as the offside rule, that's kind of like the Pee-wee checking rule. I mean, we're going to see that go back and forth. I've been around for a long, long time, and I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times where the offside has gone to immediate offside, delayed offside, and it switches back and forth. And now with the advent of ADM, which is really not new, it's 13 years old, there's more emphasis on when you create a playing rule, how does it affect the skill level of the game and what effect does it have on our players, particularly at the younger age level. So the thought process this time around, specifically from our coaching staff, our coaching experts, was let's make the players think a little bit more instead of doing the automatic where you just dump it in, everybody clears out and goes back. So you really have to be more creative with the puck, and I think that ties into their philosophy with the small area game within a game, the small area games that you have to win those battles. So it's all part of that. And the discussions that take place, on these rule changes, they're not taken lightly. I mean, we also changed a number of years ago. We used to present the rules in June and then pass them. And then all of a sudden they were instituted and in effect in September. That really didn't give leagues, players, associations, coaches enough time to say, geez, what are you doing? We only got 2 months to prepare for this. So now what we do is you have to submit the rules by November 1. They're then discussed within the different various committees and sections. We're brought to the winter meeting where we get together and there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of talk and vetting the different rules out. And then everybody goes back home for 6 months or 5 months and they take it back to their home areas and say, what do you guys think? Take it back to their association and their leagues and say, we're thinking about instituting this rule. And we vote on them in January. Now that's going to change probably too. Because I think what they want to do now is even push that forward, is that we'll vote on the rules in January to take effect in June. So okay. We're trying to back that up. But as far as the rules go, as far as how they're created, there's a group called the Rules Committee, and it's comprised of different factions within USA Hockey. The officials kind of lead that group, but they're also heavily involved with coaching, our ADM staff. Even some players are involved, some ex-Olympians are involved. And some administrators, some affiliate presidents, and everybody kind of sits around a room and they take rule by rule and they dissect every word within the rule to make sure that they've tried to clean it up as much as they can so that somebody can't interpret the rule one way where the person sitting on your left will interpret it a different way. And that's very hard to do because some of the nuances, as you know, in the rule book, they're not all black and white. Some of them are subjective to the referee. So the wording is very important how you do that. But also, how does it affect the game? Like you mentioned, high school doesn't have that. Well, our high school chairman, who happened at the time be Bob Matson from Illinois, who since he didn't rerun, but he was the high school chairperson, he didn't feel in his group, and they have people representing all 11 districts around the country or all 50 states. Their input was that we didn't think it was necessary for high school games, especially when they're trying to get more teams to join USA Hockey from Federation, and all the Federation states don't use the delay or the immediate offside. So to be more in sync with them. So there's different nuances within each particular age group. So he fought hard and obviously won that battle to exclude high school from the offside rule.
Yeah. I just learned something there. I didn't know that yet, so I appreciate it because I didn't know that's how it worked. And I was wondering about that. Is it more the skill level that they're looking at that point? Because those players at high school age, they're coming towards the end of their career. So does that weigh, like you said, there's different nuances, but does that weigh into it as well? Because those guys have been playing it so long. Was that part of the thought? Or?
Don't ever say that the high school players coming to the end of their career, because
well, you know what I mean.
We believe in USA Hockey that it's from cradle to grave. So you may, I know what you're saying, you go to high school, but then you're going to go to college and you're probably going to come back and you're either going to play in a men's league or you're going to coach, you're going to become part of the game. So I don't know if it's so much, well, skill level is a big part of it, but it's also how does it affect the game? A lot of the conversation that went around the offside rule was, well, this is going to create the games to go longer. Well, we know from past experience, their history, that really isn't the case. And I think you've seen it bear out this year. I don't think the games are going longer because of the immediate offside. I mean, it might be a minute or two more in a game, but I don't think it's causing, when you go to the rink, to be backed up for an hour or whatever it might be, sometimes when you go to tournaments. So I think a lot of times there's a lot of things around different rules that people will use, different rhetoric, but history shows us that that's not true. I'll take, for an example, the checking rule, or I'll take the rule on helmets on referees or face masks on referees. When that first got talked about and instituted, the naysayers were out there saying that we're going to lose half our referees and all that. In fact, the year after that rule was instituted, we had an increase in the number of registered officials with USA Hockey. So sometimes the rhetoric doesn't match the actual facts when you go back and do the research. So, but it's based on skill, as your question was. It's based on skill, but it's also based on how does it affect the game? Can it be instituted? Will there be acceptance? Does it affect any particular part of a game more so maybe at the older levels, maybe, and not the younger level? So all of this is vetted out with a group of probably 25 dedicated guys, and they don't just meet on the rule change year. They're in session meeting, via Zoom and then in person twice a year, all 4 years. So even though it might not be a rule change year, like we just had a rule change, they'll meet for the next 3 years, starting to dissect the different rules, and then getting back. What they really look for is input from the field, from the referees that are doing the games, from the coaches that are officiating the game. They even take player input, parent input, association, league input to say, how do you think this particular rule is going to affect the game? And as you see, we've had like an ebb and flow over the years. And I can get into this a little bit later when we're talking about officials, but for a long time it was, with the zero tolerance. Well, that was, we focused on zero tolerance. We weren't going to tolerate any of that. And then we went, well, now we're going to have a rule in there where we can throw somebody out of the stand. So we put that in to see if that would work. So a lot of different things have, been tried, and, like I said, it's nothing's concrete. It's, things may change again in 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, well, they used to have whatever they called it was, what was it, like delayed offsides, to where you would throw it in, okay, as long as the guys weren't past the top of the circle.
Top of the circle, yeah.
Okay, the top of the circle. If they threw it back in, your arm would go up for an offsides. But it was a free out of the zone.
Right.
So, like, they couldn't attack beyond the blue line, which I'm going to tell you, when we did that did not work at all for the officials at all, because now you're, like, looking at it and you're going, that was pretty dang close to the top of the circle. We can let that go. Like, it really didn't have a very good consistency to it. So I'm glad that, I have seen things tried and they've been changed.
That one didn't last. That didn't last.
No, I think that was a 2-year. I think that was a short one. I mean, I had a guy, it's kind of funny that this happened. He yelled at me that the puck went through the crease on an icing situation. Well, I think that was my second year. I've been refereeing 23 years. I think that was my second year, because it was a rule change year, and they changed that rule.
That changed a long time ago.
I had a guy yell at me about it. I'm like, oh boy. Like, here's one thing with the rule changes. Everybody always wants to know this. When do the rules actually take effect? And if they're in the middle of a session, like a season or whatnot, do those rules change instantaneously, or does that session finish out that with the older rules? Like, how does that work? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, the rules take effect for all practical purposes September 1st, because our fiscal year ends on August 31st. Even though we start registrations on April 30th, there's still some league plays, even some national championships taking place. So they're running under the existing rules. Registration starts on April 1st, but the rules stay in effect through the first of September. And then now a league can supersede that if they want to institute those rules for summer league or things like that. But for the most part, they start August 30th, they end.
Okay.
That's fair, because that's a good question. Yeah, it definitely comes into play. I'm curious too, Jim. One of the things that we've talked a little bit about on the show is when they do have these rule changes. For example, AHI, which is a pretty big organization. I don't know the number of members we have within it, but it's certainly what's that?
About 33,000 members in AHI.
33,000. So, we're significantly larger than maybe, the Dubuque, Iowa organization, or
Well, they're the fifth
somebody down
largest.
in Arkansas that has one rink in the entire state. And I'm just curious how we don't get more, like a little more powerful vote on things that happen versus, a smaller community that doesn't have the same number of members in it.
Well, okay, that's a good question. But if you dissect the board of directors, which is 91 members, it's
Oh,
USA Hockey is run more like the Senate than it is the House. We have
Yeah.
we have four elected directors from each district except North and South Dakota, which is two because they're a smaller district. And that was to separate them from Minnesota for a lot of different reasons. So we actually have 46 district directors. Then we also have, what do we, we also have like 46 directors that are non-district directors. We have section directors, and they can come wherever they're elected from various places. We have athlete directors, about 21 currently, and they represent different parts of the country, but they're less in tune to be politically associated with a particular area of the country because they're really been training for a long time and they're not into the swing of things. And then we have at-large directors, 6 at-large directors. So we have a cadre of officials. We have 46, which is the biggest single, but we also have, like I said, 21 athlete directors. We have 6 section directors. We have 6 at-large directors. And so there's a whole myriad of people. So we have 4 per district because that's just the way it's always been. I guess you could go from, that, but then you get into, if you looked at the U.S. government, they're constantly changing the voting. What do you call it? Every 10 years with the census, they're who gets a representative and who doesn't.
yeah.
You'd have to be keeping track of those numbers, and then you lose one another. Now, interesting enough, USA Hockey, because of the USOC and because of what's gone on with the Nassar case and the restructuring of all of the NGBs, we're reducing our board of directors effective. It'll be voted on in June. It was approved basically, not officially, but in January. But in June, we'll be approving it. It'll be going down to a 24-man executive or a board of directors, 24-man, and then there'll be a Congress. And the Congress will consist of about 60 people that will represent different parts of the country in various different titles or whatever. But the ultimate vote for the budget and a couple of other key issues will fall within that 24-man, which is currently the way it's operated with the executive committee of USA Hockey. For all practical purposes, that's what we do now. The president, when I was president, we had an executive committee of 18 people. So in effect, we pretty much make the day-to-day decisions, and then Congress or the board would meet officially in winter meeting and then at the annual meeting. But that's how it's kind of run. But it's going to be reduced quite a bit. But the input will be more under this new governance structure to fall in line with the USOPC regulations.
Very interesting.
Interesting.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what USA Hockey is doing for abusive officials? I mean, that's been a major topic for a number of years. Is there anything that we can be looking at down the road that hasn't been tried or has been talked about? Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, but have we had more incidents this year than we've had in a while, or is it about the same?
It's kind of interesting that you asked, because there was like the beginning of the year, I think everybody was just so happy to be playing hockey. There wasn't a lot, but I think it's all fallen back into the norms from what I've heard. And there were a couple of weekends there that were pretty hairy, and I actually called our Rules and Ethics Committee chair, for suspensions, and I called him at like 9:00 on a Saturday, and he's like, "What are you doing calling me so early? Normally you would call me 10:30, 11 o'clock at night." He's like, "I don't expect you to call." He's like, "What happened? Is everything okay?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I had this happen. I was refereeing, but I let him know that I felt that in the way the situation happened, I ejected a player, and that player ended up in tune getting 2 games. And I'm like, hey, you guys don't have to call me. I'll let you know this is what happened. I don't really think he should get 2 games, but if you guys come to the determination that he should, that's fine. I'm just giving you my story." And because when I wrote it up, it didn't really make that much sense to me, like how I wrote it. And I'm like, I better just call him and let him know. So I just, gave him a buzz, and I like how we do stuff here. And it's nice to hear that we're going to be doing some stuff with, like, USA Hockey is expanding on where they're going to get feedback. So
Well, we have the new system which you guys created, USA Hockey, that we report to now, which
Yep.
obviously is going to give you way more in terms of the data from each area of the country and what's being called and what if it's being called a lot or if we're having problems with it. So that's great. Would you care to elaborate on that system and some of the reasons why we made that change to be beneficial for you guys?
Yeah, let me just say it from your original question, which is really a, um, a a passionate part of what I'm trying to get accomplished right now, and that is to bring officiating back to where it was back in the '80s. And I don't think there's one answer that can say, well, how do you stop, abuse? I think there's several components that cause that to happen. I think the biggest reason it's happening is societal. I just think we're in a day and age, we live in a society now that you can say whatever you want with no consequences. Now, whatever society, the political persuasion you happen to be on, it's just plain wrong. I mean, you can't go into a mall and yell at a 14-year-old kid or you'll be arrested. You can't go into a school and do that. Yet, for some reason, you go into a sports field or a hockey rink and you can berate and almost physically attack a 14-year-old and pretty much nothing happens. Okay, so that has to be fixed. But you have to look at the underlying causes. And USA Hockey has put together a task force of, again, a cadre of people, of coaches, referees. And I've read some comments online about, well, this will just be another task force. But no, I don't think that's going to happen this time. I think they're going to take some concrete action. Um, and I mentioned it earlier in the show. One of the things we did was we put a rule in that said, let's put zero tolerances. And for a year or two, there was a big kick on zero tolerance. We're not going to tolerate anything, and boom, 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 and that sort of faded away. Then a couple of years later, we put a rule in that says, well, now we're going to be able to, a referee is going to be able to eject somebody from the stand. So we put that rule in, and that seemed to work for even a shorter period of time. And I go back to the underlying reason as to why are people complaining, and I won't use the B word, but why are people complaining about the officiating? And in part, and I'm not saying in all cases, in most cases, I think the officials do a pretty good job. But this is the only field that I can see where when you go do a job that you're getting paid to do, you don't have to do a good job to be able to work the next day. If I'm a plumber and I go to somebody's house and I leave that house after I perform my work and that pipe is leaking, or I did a shoddy job, I'm going to either have to come back and refund the money, fix it, or never be in the business again. And unfortunately, until we can get to, and these are not short-term answers, but the long-term answer is we as officials, and I think you guys will agree, every one of us, when we go on the ice, we have to accept the fact that we're going to be held accountable for the performance that we do for that day. Not what we did yesterday, not what we did 2 years ago, but how we performed that day. And that can be done by enlisting the help of the coaches, enlisting the help of the leagues, help with the affiliates and USA Hockey, all working together as opposed to individual silos. And so, with the advent of the iPhone, we should be able to make sure that every coach, when we officiate a game, he rates that referee at the end of the game. Simple thing by going in there, take 5 minutes to do it. You compile all that information. You build the biases because there's going to be certain biases. We're all human. You build the biases into that. But every coach, if you want to make it better, get involved. And you have to rate the coaches. And I know that as an official, if I know I'm being looked at or evaluated, I'm going to hustle a little bit faster to that line. My calls are going to be a little bit crisper. I'm going to make sure that I'm mentally sharp for each game. Now, the other thing we have to do, which I think is hurting the game, is I've been in the locker room the last 2 months with a number of officials. I had a guy 3 weeks ago, a young kid, he says, well, how many games you doing this weekend? Well, I got 16 between Saturday and Sunday. Another guy had 11. Another guy had 14. I know you guys, I talked to you before we went on the air, you had 6 and you had 4. I don't think you're mentally or physically, you might be physically if you're younger, but you're not mentally as sharp in the 14th game as you are the first game of that day. And right now, unfortunately, refereeing system in a lot of parts of the country, it's not just here in Illinois, it's done based on availability instead of credibility. I think we should have to earn our stripes when we go out there every single time. Now, I think there's some programs that you can put in effect to make that happen. Right now, we have a mentoring program. And what it is you go out and you follow a young official, whatever, on the ice. And I'm thinking what's really tough, and it ties into scheduling, because a lot of the young officials will go out and they'll spend money on new pants and a sweater and a visor and a helmet and registration and go through the seminars. And if you're old enough, you have to go through Safe Sport and get screened and blah, 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 blah. And but then they go to ref a game, and because one of the unintended consequences that have happened is the ADM. ADM is a wonderful program, and it's helped the skill development. In fact, every other NGB under the USOPC has adopted the ADM. They've even asked to use the same name. Other countries have looked to adopt the ADM. Small station-based, our skill level is definitely going up. You can see it in our international competition. You can see it at the junior level. But what we haven't done is, because I'm losing my train of thought here, but I mean, what we haven't done is when all of these things are being done, we said, okay, let's not have mites play 70 games anymore. Let's not have skirts play as many games. We're going to do station-based practices. In the long term, it's going to be better for the game. And it is. And it works. And it's a great program. However, we took away the training ground for all of our level 1 officials. It's tough for level 1 to get games. So he can't even cover his nuts or to buy the equipment, the pants and the pants and the visor and all of that, because he's not doing it. One of the things that I'd like to see instituted, and I think Illinois, and I suggested it when we were at the meeting, do a reverse mentoring program. And by that, I mean, instead of a mentor go out on the ice with a referee and follow that referee around, get a 2-man system. I don't care. You can go all the way up to midgets. And I think a 14-year-old new level 1 official can go do a midget game, because you got two level 2 or 3 guys, whatever the mentors, on the ice, the 2 guys doing the ice. The new official, he does the shadowing, not the mentor. So he will be out there just following one of the guys, and he can tell him when he's talking to him at the blue line where to be, how to position, how to make the calls, how to proper signaling. What's the proper bench communication with the bench? How do you react to somebody that's yelling at you? He learns. He doesn't have the pressure of officiating the game. He's not officiating the game. He doesn't make any calls. The other thing we do is we ask the USA Hockey, as part of the USA Block Grant, which every affiliate gets, and it's based on $3 per registered player from the previous season. So a lot of these, especially the larger affiliates, they got some pretty good money coming in, and they put that back into the game. I think what we should do is we should take this reverse mentoring program, and all level 1 officials have to do 5 games under this program. So you go out on the ice, you follow 2 guys, and they may be doing a high school game, midget. It doesn't really matter what level it is, because you're not calling the game. You're not going to have no effect on the game, and you're not going to get in the way. Then we pay them $25 a game, so that they at least make $125 based, and that money comes from the block grant and the affiliates, and maybe the leagues kick in a little bit, because all of us have to be in this together to make it work. And then if we can train, let's just pick some small numbers. If we can keep, because our highest drop off of officials is between level 1 and level 2. If we can keep 75 new officials for the next 3 years, that's 225 new officials that we have probably under the age of 20, because you're going to pay them. They're going to cover their nut for their equipment their first year and the registration fee and all that other stuff. But they're going to go out there and they're going to learn. And they're going to learn because they're not under the pressure of calling a game. That's just one example that I'd like to see instituted. But I think you need to get the leagues involved. You need the coaches to be involved, the associations, and you have to fill out, you have to rate the referees. And then the referees have to step it up a bit, because right now, like I said, I've seen a lot of guys out there, and they're basically doing, and it's not their fault. They're doing it because they're available. They're doing 16 games a weekend. There is no way anybody can do 16 games in a weekend and be as good in the 16th game as you are on the first. We've got to change that. And so, as you can see, I'm a little bit passionate about this. So, but I think there are ways, if we sit down, we can figure this out, and it doesn't have to take 3 years to do it. I think we can institute, and Illinois has always been a leader, IHOA, with instituting new programs. I think we could do some other programs. We could get our officials back up. So we're asking the guy to do 2-3 games a day, maybe not 15 games a day.
I hope that grant that you're talking about, is big, because I just did the rough numbers, and it's a big number.
It is.
So it's a big number. I didn't expect it to be that much, but yeah, there's more level 1 officials right now. We have 671 in Illinois currently, so that's a good number for us.
Maybe I'll take the mandatory every level 1 official. Maybe we select 75 officials and make it work. But we need to think of solutions like that will enhance keeping guys more than just 1 year, because that's our biggest fall off. We're just not getting the guys to stick around, and part of it is the abuse. And again, we have to take steps to, and I can't figure this out. I've been trying for years. If you go to a restaurant and you're disorderly, you're pretty much thrown out and you're not asked never to come back, and they'll enforce that by getting the police there. Yet in rinks, for some reason, we just allow this to happen. I mean, the behavior that we're seeing is just it's ridiculous. Now, part of that, and I'm the first to say it, is that I don't think in all cases we're putting a good product on the ice with the officiating. We're just not, and that's why I said before. You want me to be honest, or you want me to be political? But I think we need to have some guys, some officials say, I've got to earn my stripes every day that I'm out there, and we have to create systems to make sure that that's going to happen. You've got to earn it. You got to earn your right to be there. It isn't given to you.
I think most of the guys do earn their rights, especially at the higher level games. I think, where you're going to run into this is you've got a lot of lower level games that really, guys maybe not be, the higher level guys may not be as passionate about working some of those levels. They do it to help out sometimes, but, they also not compensated as well either, probably. And, I think, it's a combination of things.
Yeah, you're right.
I think they take the games where they can, but your good officials are really working hard. I mean, I had a guy in the locker room yesterday. He was working a Cougars game. He fell the night before and he slid on the ice so bad he cut his hand to the bone. He was bleeding profusely. They had to put a tourniquet on it or whatever, and he turned around and finished the game. And he was out there the next day. He's all bandaged up. He might be dropping the puck with an opposite hand, but I mean, the referees are just as passionate about doing a great job and being there, for the games.
I think that's to get me wrong here. I don't mean most of it. There are some officials that we need to encourage to earn their stripes every time they're out there. Most of the guys do a pretty good job, but I still say, what do you guys think, Scott, Brad? As far as here, I'm interviewing you guys.
Yeah. Well,
it's okay.
I'm going to give you I'll give you my honest opinion on something because I recommend. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How many games do you think an official should do in one day or a weekend, Saturday, Sunday? How many do you think?
I think they can do 4 to 6. I think the good officials can do 4 to 6 games a day.
Okay, but the average.
I think that's fair. I mean, because you try not to do 4 in a row. Doing 2 in a row, taking a break, getting 2 more works pretty nicely. 3 in a row is a little bit tougher. Certainly, the second set of 3 is a lot tougher. But if you get that break, a little bit of break in between, you're refreshed and you're good to go. But yeah. I guess, what I was going to say is when you're talking about having the mentors on the ice in that situation, I had made a recommendation a couple of years ago and I got a proposal for it. I almost feel like we need, what they use is like a wireless earpiece. And you could have somebody in the stands wired that can actually communicate with the person on the ice for development to teach them where to go. More so than being out there, because even in a mite or a squirt game, believe it or not, if you have 2 officials on the same side and they're trying to work together, it's not always easy for them to get out of the way. And if you had a high school game, you saw how fast the game we worked, that Loyola Gold game that we were on, if you had a second person behind you, somebody's going to get clobbered out there. So I just think if we had the in-ear connectivity to that person, that we could really help them. But there's a cost to that, and you need some people that technically know what they're doing and the systems to pull that off. But it could be done.
Yeah, and again, that's another great idea. I mean, it's just we need to think of ideas because what we've been doing isn't working. We're down with officials all over the country, and there's a lot of different reasons for it. But we need to fix it because it's an important part of our game, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, our number, our total number has kind of stayed stagnant for 10, 15 years. And then we had, we'll call it the lockout year. We had the lockout year, and, a lot of guys that I know have reffed a lot of times, they were kind of like, yeah, I made it by. So do I really need to do this? Friday night, I could take my wife out now. Yeah. So I think that was something that really hurt us big time too. I like the idea of putting a reverse mentor on that. I like that idea to where they come out onto a higher level game and they work with you, because those games are going to have those situations more often to where you have to actually go up and talk with a coach or have a discussion about a rule, or in the average mic game or squirt game that you even have, they don't come up. It's normally fine, 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 crazy person, fine, 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 crazy person. So like that would be the one thing. And your point was excellent before about how the kids can't play as many games. I never even put that together to where now these kids can't play so many games. So now you have all these new referees coming in, but there's no place for them to go.
Yeah.
And they're getting thrown on these higher level games and they're being set up for failure. So
They've
I think that's a great point.
They've tried to, do the cross ice and put one official out there and that type of thing. But, they're just so it's not one answer is going to fit everything, but you got to try a couple of these different things to see if they're going to work. I mean, the other thing that we need to do, and this is more countrywide than it is here, because here, I believe it's probably the right way to do it. And that's not just because I live here, because I was part of the system back in '70 when we met in Dave Labuta's basement, Kenny Michael and several of them,
all the legends of hockey.
put a structure together. I mean, we have to, I'm going to get killed for saying this if people are watching around the country, but I'm going to say it anyway, because we need to break some of these referee unions, because they're not good or healthy for the game. I mean, they control, I've been in rinks, and I was in a rink in Michigan last year or 2 years ago before the lockout or whatever. And we were doing a disabled festival, and if you didn't ref for this particular group, you couldn't do any of our games because they had the assignment for the disabled festival. I said, well, we need refs. I said, well, I'm not with that group. I can't do the games. And that's just malarkey. I mean, we got to figure out, you got to, I'm not saying break the unions, but we have to figure out a way that the game belongs to the players. The game the game is managed by the affiliates, and those are the people that have to take ownership in the game. So, I know Illinois has done that. They approve the referee association every year. They approve the scheduling, and they monitor it, and they put certain parameters in, and that's what needs to be done. You can't just have outside groups, and there's a lot of money flowing through those bank accounts, for officiating, and I've seen some of them, and they're well into the seven figures. So we just need to put some things in effect that the game belongs to the players. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
So got a question too. I don't want to change the subject at all, but I wanted to now talk about a little bit about the like the referee training and everything, because we have the testing and the modules and things of that nature. Could you give us a little background? Some of us have heard some stories in terms of how it's done, but the test questions are written by other referee in chiefs and things of that nature. Can you walk us through how that process works with them and how they actually come up with the test? And I know next year we're not going to have a closed book test, I understand. So we're going to be doing more of an online, or I'm not online, but an open book test for each level. Can you explain a little bit about how that's going to work and what we can expect in the future from USA Hockey?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is they are aware of the problem with officiating, and part of it is people are saying, you require a lot from an official or a coach when you get into the game. I'll take a coach for example. I'm practicing once a week, and I'm going to hire Scott. I'm going to say, you're a dad, and you're going to come. Why don't you come coach? But before you do that, I want you to go over to that corner right over there, and I want you to register with USA Hockey and pay a fee for that. But when you get done with that, you're over the age of 18. I want you to go kitty corner, and I want you to take the Safe Sport thing, which is several different modules. Now, when you get done with that, go to this corner over here on the northeast side, and I want you to I want you to pay a fee for that. Now, when you get done with that, I want you to go to the fourth corner over here, and I want you to start taking some progressive modules for coaching, because you have to go from one level to the next. And the guy says, I'm only going to be on the ice 20 times during the year, and you've already got me working 16 hours worth of stuff to get there. And I think the officiating is the same thing. They're trying to take a look at ways like with the open book test and saying, you know what, there's a different way to learn the rules and try to, and the pressure that goes on. And some people aren't good at doing tests. Some people are very good on the ice, but they're not good at tests. As far as your question is, how are the tests done? They're done by the district referee and chiefs who submit questions, and they're trying to be, what's the word? Not intuitive, but not intriguing. I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of it. But provocative, so that it makes you think about the question. It isn't just a matter of just opening up the rule book and say page 22, because they're subject. A lot of the rules, as I mentioned earlier, are subjective. You can interpret them different ways. So they try to make you think when you're taking the test and do that. I think that's good. I think with the advent of, and what we all learned through the COVID situation with Zoom, is that we can communicate effectively by not having to meet in person all the time, because the clinics became, as you know, and I think you've all worked at clinics too. I mean, they're tedious. I mean, to go all day long and, in Illinois, I think we're training 800 to 1,000 officials. I mean, to put all those people through seminars, and then we used to do, up until a couple of years ago, everybody had ice, and you had to go to the ice session and go over to a rink, and it was just it was a lot of work, and the results I don't think were that positive. So I think they're looking at different ways to make getting into the game earlier and then having ongoing education as opposed to learning everything up front. So
interesting. That would be a good. I could see that, to where, like, okay, I think a lot of people would be more happy if they weren't required to do a seminar every 4 years. Like I could see, like, where you'd have, like, so, like, for me, I'm 23 years. Like, okay, I get, like, a rule change year, I have to have something. I understand that 100%. But I think a lot of people would even be happy with, okay, it's the second year. Guys that have been around that long, they read the emails that USA Hockey puts out. They read the memos that come out from USA Hockey. I'm one of those people. Every time I see an email, I read it. Or I also read USA Hockey magazine still. And I know a lot of guys do, because they bring it up in the locker rooms. So I think maybe some more continuing education, more at our own speed, guess you put it that way, which you're going to get individuals that aren't going to do anything no matter what. But then you got a lot of individuals that are doing a ton already, but yet every year they have to go sit in a 6-hour seminar, 3-hour seminar. And it's, after you've been a level 4 for 15 years, I don't see what I'm getting out of it other than the new rules every 4 years. So I think that's one of the big frustrations. And that's kind of more of a blanket statement than a question or anything. But
Brad, I agree with you. I mean, officiating is kind of like, or the rules in officiating, it's kind of like history. History never changes. You can't change history. I mean, so whatever rules we make, if you learn the rules the first year, they're not changing to year 2. I mean, it's not like somebody changed all the rules. I mean, once you learn them, it's kind of like, if you know the capital of Mexico, well, then that's not changing next week when you ask the same question. All right. It's how you interpret that. So I think, to answer your question, I mean, or your statement or whatever, they are looking at different ways to have ongoing education, more than, I think, the open book test is one of those things. Let's relax things, just take it down a notch a little bit, but let's find ways to be more creative in our learning process.
Yeah. I'm looking I think it's going to be good, because I really think the open book tests are very educational, and they make you, like, really look through the book and figure things out. And I think that's been a great way to do it. So I think an expanded version that is going to be welcomed by a lot of the officials. I think it's a good move.
I still take my open book test with my book. I look up every question. Even though I know the answer, I look it up and I read that rule.
Yep.
I've done that ever since I started refereeing.
Yep.
Yeah. Very good. So tell us a little bit about, you're so involved in disabled hockey, Jim. How did you get started in that? And, what is your goal for USA Hockey and, of course, the disabled?
Well, my immediate goal is to win the gold medal in Beijing in 2.5 weeks. We were supposed to go. I actually got involved in disabled hockey when I met, it's funny, I went with Norm Spiegel, and who used to be the president of AHI for 6 years. And a kid by the name of J.J. O'Connor broke his neck playing hockey at the Skokie ice rink when he was 16. Yeah. So I went to visit him. I just went to visit him and, wish him well or whatever, and then ended up going back the next day, and 27 years later, still doing the same thing. But he got, and then when he got done, he went to finished high school and college. And then we were looking at that time, Irv Tianovec, who happened to have been from Chicago. He started.
I remember Irv. Yeah, I remember. I played hockey with his son, Lex, who was hearing impaired.
Yep,
yeah,
and he was
great guy.
He started the Hearing Impaired Association with Stan Mikita, and he was the chair of the section, but it was just basically at USA Hockey, just a non-functional section at that time. And he was getting older and decided to retire. And I was up and coming. I wasn't president at that time. I think I was secretary or treasurer or whatever, but suggested J.J. O'Connor, thought he'd be a good fit. Somebody that's played the game, now is disabled, kind of knows both sides of the street. So he took that position as the youngest director we ever had at USA Hockey at age 21, and started to build and tried to build the different disciplines. And he did that for 20 years and built all of the different disciplines into probably the most hockey, USA Hockey has the most acceptable disabled sports program of any group outside of an adaptive sports association by far. We have 6 different disciplines in blind hockey, which is our newest discipline, which if you've never seen a blind hockey game, I got the opportunity to ref the first US-Canada game in the United States. And ironically enough, one of the rules are that the most blind person has to be the goaltender. And that's because his sound, he can hear things. And you play with a puck that's about maybe 5 inches in diameter, filled with ball bearings. And the referee carries in one hand a whistle, and another hand he carries an air horn. And one of the rules is when you go over the offensive zone, you have to make one pass. And then the referee, once you make that pass, blows the horn. That alerts everybody on the ice, including the goalkeeper, that a shot will be forthcoming. And so when that horn blows, the referee gets in his stance like this. And I've seen him make catch gloves because he hears it coming, and it's amazing to watch. I've never seen anything like it. But that's blind hockey. Then we have special hockey for individuals with cognitive disabilities. We have hearing impaired, as I mentioned. We have standing amputee. We have warrior hockey, which is about 5 years old for our injured veterans that are coming back. And then we have sled hockey, which is probably the most popular. We've won the gold medal. Actually, a little interesting story. In 1998, we didn't really have anybody in the United States organized team or anything. The USOPC didn't have anything. So Japan sent a check over for $25,000 and said, could you get a group of guys to come over? They went over there, finished dead last, lost every game by an average of 8 goals. We came back in 2002 in Salt Lake City as the host, everybody predicting that the U.S. team would be horrible. They ended up winning the gold medal. Patrick, he's a gentleman, Irish guy from Patrick Byrne from Illinois, played sled hockey with the RIC Blackhawks. He was on that gold medal team. And then we went back in Torino, and I was in the games in Torino with JJ. We were scouting it out so USA Hockey could take over the national team. And we lost the game because of a referee blew the call from Finland in the semifinal game. So to this day,
Blame the ref. Blame the ref.
There it is.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm a ref, and he blew the call. Anyway, we ended up winning the bronze medal that year, but then we came back in Vancouver in 2010, Sochi in 2014, and Pyeongchang in 2018, won the gold medal for 3 consecutive. And hopefully right now, 2 of our best players, the 1 and 2 players in the world, they're probably tied for the 2 best players in the world, Brody Roybal and Declan Farmer. Brody was the youngest U.S. player ever to win a gold medal in ice hockey. He played on our Hornets team that I coach since he was 8 years old. In fact, I just had his family over here yesterday for the Super Bowl, but great people. And so we're hoping that they win another gold medal. Just another little tidbit. Do you know where the word Paralympic comes from?
No.
So I do because you told me, but I'll let you do it again.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I used to always think it was paralyzed athletes or paraplegic or whatever, but if you think about it, they're really not paralyzed, all the athletes, or they're not paraplegics. It comes by the Olympic Creed. 2 weeks to the day when they extinguish the flame for the regular games, both the summer and winter games, they have to relight the flames for the Paralympics. 2 weeks to the day when they extinguish the flames, they have to relight the flames. Thus, it's parallel to the Olympics. Thus, the word Paralympics. That's where it comes from. So, just an interesting side note. If you're in the locker room, I want to tell another referee that. So,
I have told so many people that, even outside of refereeing, and people are blown away. So I was blown away. So I remembered it. So. I appreciate the little fact.
But it's great that USA Hockey really has adapted. They've done it both from a financial standpoint, but also support, and the affiliates have taken, and even the referees. I mean, I run it, myself and JJ, we run a Christmas tournament every year, the Hornets, and we play up at the Orbit Ice Arena. And I just put the call out through Jack Kozlowski. I said, we have anybody who wants to come and volunteer. And they come out of the woodwork, the referees, saying, yeah, I'll give something back to the game. So I'm so appreciative of the referees. I mean, they want to come back, and they do the same thing for our special hockey group. We play benefit games against Bantam, midget, high school teams, police departments, and there's always somebody saying, "How can I help? How can I do this?" And that's just a fraternity that we belong to, which is pretty cool in my mind.
Well, that leads me to my next point, because as you're talking about the incredible people that we have that are referees and involved in USA Hockey, we had an incident over the weekend at one of the rinks, and one of the referees, Todd Permit, he's an anesthesiologist. He's a referee here in Illinois, and there was a situation in the stands at Romeoville, and you were actually there, right, Brad? So,
Yeah,
I'm going to let you kind of tell the story, but, this is just another one of our exceptional, talented people that went way out of their way to try to help someone.
Yeah, so little backstory at Romeoville Ice Arena, there's 2 mezzanine sections. So if people haven't been there, but they're totally concrete, and the stairs that go up to them are metal. And a grandfather was there. His grandkid had just scored, because this is the story that we were told. I'm going to say it's probably pretty accurate. He had just scored. He jumped up to cheer, and he hit the floor.
Yeah, he had a massive heart attack.
Somebody yelled, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And Todd got off the ice, ran up the stairs, across the mezzanine in his skates, full gear. It told somebody to go get the AED from in front. Got down, checked the guy, started CPR on him, shocked him. I think he said 2 times, and then it was out of juice, or 3 times. And he got him to where he was breathing again when he left in the ambulance. Yeah. So I couldn't imagine 8.5 minutes of CPR, but kudos to Todd.
Yeah. And then go back down and finish reffing the game that you're working on top of it, and then go to some more games. So, that's pretty incredible.
It's a remarkable story, and it gets back to what we were talking about earlier, that, every official that's on the ice, they're not doing this full time. I mean, these are part-time schemes. So everybody has a story. Everybody has a profession. Even the young kids. I mean, they might be in the school play. They might be dating a girl. They might be doing who knows what.
Sure.
So we need to treat them like we treat everybody else. They're not any different. They might be performing a task on the ice, in the role of an official, but they're also human beings. So I think we have to get back to some of that, and take it down a notch. Like we were talking earlier, that you still see some of this nonsense that's going on. We need to get back to civility. I know a big part of it's our society, but we can take the lead. Our sport's I think it's still the best sport. It's the greatest game that's ever been invented. I think we can take a leadership role and show people how it's supposed to be done.
I agree, 100%.
Well, we are coming up on an hour, so I don't know how
I didn't even realize it was
Jim.
an hour.
I know you have a lot to do, and the time goes really quickly. So,
wow.
If anybody has any questions before we start to wrap things up, put them in the comments. First of all, thank you for doing this. I mean, you're a volunteer as a president for 6 years. I mean, you got to be able to, still run a business on top of USA Hockey, which is pretty incredible, and all the years of dedication that you've put into the game. I mean, that is quite impressive, I must say.
Yeah, well, I've gotten the game more out of the game than the game that I could ever give to the game. I mean, there's been incredible people. I've made a lot of lifelong friends. I mean, it's just, it's a different sport. I always, people say, "Why do you spend so much time with hockey?" I said, "Because it's like a second family. It's different than any other sport." I mean, I look at baseball, I look at football, youth baseball, soccer. I'm going to say something now that I probably I won't say that, but I just think it's a sport, and maybe it's because we're in an enclosed arena, but your family, your community, whether you're an official, whether you're a coach, whether you're a player, we're all doing it for the same reason. And that's what makes it so special. So I've gotten more out of it than I could ever give back to it. So, again, and I have a bladder problem. So when I have to go to the bathroom, I leave the room, and then somebody raises my hand to go volunteer for something. So I don't know.
That's how they get it done. Very good.
Bladder problem. So.
All right.
Great.
Anything you want to cover with us before we go, Jim? Anything you want to?
Thank you. I think it's great that you're doing this. I mean, I found out you've been doing it for about 1.5 years, and it's a voice, or it's somewhere where people can go and listen to different stories and then ask questions. Everybody can learn. I've learned some stuff tonight. I mean, just you learn things, and that's how we make the game better, and that's what we're all in it for. So,
Agreed.
Any final thoughts, Brad?
No, I just can't believe an hour went by that fast. My whole day went by fast, though.
We have no questions.
You know what?
Sometimes it doesn't work. It's probably an API issue because I didn't see anything come through on Facebook. Normally, it loads up from Facebook, so I'm only seeing YouTube comments today. So the APIs for these companies, they work some weeks they don't. It's just the way it is. It's everybody trying to talk through another system called Restream, so it's kind of crazy, but that's how it works. Yep. So with that, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this and for all you do for USA Hockey and for all of us. Thank you, Jim Smith, 6-time president of USA Hockey, everybody.
Guys, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. So good luck with your show.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Brad, anything else you got before we go? That's going to do it for us.
Other than happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
That's right.
That's probably another reason on why there's such low numbers. So
yeah, everybody's getting their dinner in before they have to go work.
Before they have to go skate.
Exactly. So don't forget, if you haven't hit the subscribe button for all the replay viewers, please hit the subscribe button and the notification button. We do this every Monday, 5:30 p.m. Central here in Chicago. I am Scott Smokin Silz, joined by our special guest, Jim Smith from USA Hockey and Brad Baumruck. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next Monday, 5:30 p.m. right here on the Ref Room. Peace out.